Hi everyone, I want to thank you for subscribing to this channel, and in this video I would like to talk about genetically modified organisms, particularly focusing on transgenic plants. And I will be talking about this in relation to the trending controversy about genetically modified crops in Nigeria. And I want to also at the end of the video give my own opinion about what could be done in relation to genetically modified crops. So first, what are genetically modified organisms? So GMO is a more general term, so we have to first establish that, and it can be used in relation to plants. You can have plants that are GMO, you can have bacteria that is GMO, you can have animal that is GMO, that is a genetically modified organism. So, and in a more like simple way of definition, genetically modified organisms includes any organism whose genetic material, let's call it in a more common term, DNA, has been modified, or let's say has been edited, in order to make that organism develop new sets of traits of interest. So you can take, for example, you have an orange tree in your garden that is producing bitter orange, and you want to make it to start producing sweet orange fruit. So one thing you can do is that you can manipulate the genetic material of the orange tree or the orange plant and try to edit it in such a way to make the bitter fruit producing tree to sweet fruit producing tree. So but that you can do by genetically modifying the DNA of that plant, and this approach can be applied to even microorganisms as bacteria and viruses, to give them desired traits that could help survival and that could even have an application in health and medicine. And this approach also is the basis for for gene therapy, which I've discussed in one of my previous video. So in relation to the trending controversies, also I would also like to talk about glyphosate. Glyphosate is one of the most widely used herbicide in Nigeria and also in the world at large. It is known for its low cost, low toxicity, and it is effective against a quite number of weeds. So you can use it against different types of weed. So it is non-selective, which makes it a better choice for let's say for farmers to use it as an herbicide in order to kill weeds on their farm. And from two different studies, one by Oyetunji et al., which is from Lautech Department of Agriculture, and another one from Adeola et al. From Yaba College of Technology, in collaboration with some people from the Iowa State University in the US. So these two papers shows that the first one shows that glyphosate is like the second most commonly reported herbicide in some set of papers that were used as a data set in this particular study. And another one, the second one, shows that glyphosate is like the one that have the highest percentage of usage in southwestern parts of Nigeria, including Ogun, Ondo and Oyo, and this can be seen from these two papers. What are the take home from these two studies, two recent studies, one in 2024 and one that was published in this year, is that in Nigerian agricultural system there is high level of glyphosate herbicide usage, and this may not in particular be related to or might have anything to do with genetically modified plants. So because the second study focused on small scaled farmer in the southern western parts or in the southwestern parts of Nigeria. But one or another take home from the study is that it also shows that there is a need for development of glyphosate tolerant crops, that is crops that could survive glyphosate activity in inhibiting the growth of plants, because if such crops are not developed, it implies that this particular herbicide might target both the good crops and also the weed on farmers on agricultural farmland. So but one approach to getting glyphosate tolerant crop is to use genetic engineering, that is to genetically modify plants in such a way that they become more tolerant to to glyphosate herbicide. Now another thing also is that even naturally the pressure of glyphosate usage could also lead to development of crops naturally or even plants that are resistant to this particular herbicide. So naturally glyphosate tolerant crops can also naturally develop due to evolutionary process. And this just like a short description of how transgenic plants are produced. You have a DNA containing your desired traits. You introduce it to a plasmid called Ti plasmid, and then introduce this plasmid into the plant cell, and then you have the last step is like regeneration of the plant from the cell. So that is and then you have a plant with your new traits. Now basically the application of transgenic plants includes like developing plants that are resistant to pests, to virus, to insect and herbicide, because pest, virus, insect are they are biological factors that could affect farmers' yield. So one way to fight this problem is to develop crops or plants that are resistant to viruses, to pests and to insects. Now another way also is that transgenic plants can also be a way to develop plants that has some nutritional benefits. You could have heard about yellow rice, yellow cassava, which are food items supplemented with vitamin A, and this also solves a problem with vitamin A deficiency, especially among children. And another thing also is that transgenic plants could also be used to develop plants that grows in marginalized land as desert or even soils that have high level of salt. And the last one that I mentioned here is developing therapeutic protein. Some biopharmaceutical companies use transgenic plants in order to produce their therapeutic proteins, which are used in health and medicine. So what is the major concern about herbicide, glyphosate herbicide and transgenic crop? The strategy used in producing transgenic crop is not particularly to eliminate glyphosate from plants, but rather to reduce its activity in terms of inhibiting the growth of plants. So transgenic crop does not the strategy used in developing them is not particularly to eliminate glyphosate, but rather to reduce the effect, to reduce the activity of glyphosate in terms of inhibiting the growth of plants. So what this will lead to is that since glyphosate is not eliminated in transgenic crops, so that means that glyphosate becomes the concentration or the level or the amount of glyphosate in this plant begins to grow, or the glyphosate becomes accumulated in this plant. And what people are crying about or are trying to create awareness about is that transgenic crop could pose a threat in terms of being a reservoir for accumulation of these harmful chemicals. And to be found, a way out of this is to develop transgenic plants that can in a way eliminate this glyphosate, not in particular to eradicate transgenic crop, but at the same time to shift the strategy of developing this crop towards elimination of this harmful substance from plants. But aside the threats from transgenic plants, herbicide used in farms, especially the glyphosate as shown from these two previous studies have shown, can also pose a threat for accumulation of glyphosate even in food item, aside the one that could also be from transgenic or genetically modified plants. Now, in my opinion, I would want to say that saying that transgenic plants or genetically modified plants are herbicide is not a true statement, but rather it is better said that it will be better it will be a better statement to make saying that transgenic plants are contributing to our exposure to harmful chemicals from herbicide, in the sense that if genetically modified plants are not developed in such a way to eliminate this herbicide, then they become accumulated in the plants, and this poses like threats to human life. But another thing also is that just like artificial intelligence, transgenic crop also is already here with us, and people are making investment into developing this type of crop, because not only because of the threats they pose, but also because of how they can also be used to solve the problem of nutritional deficiency and food security. So another thing also is that, in my opinion, I think what we need in Nigeria, I just mentioned like 3 points in this list, is first that government need to put regulations on glyphosate herbicide usage in agricultural farmland, because if there is no regulation for the usage of glyphosate herbicide, this can even pose a threat aside the ones from the transgenic crop. But the regulations will only hold if farmers have alternatives to glyphosate herbicide. So there's also a need for research in developing herbicide that have less significant side effect to human health. So one is that government must place regulation to regulate the high level of glyphosate herbicide usage in farmlands. At the same time, create like research that will look into alternative for glyphosate herbicide. Another thing also is that if there is any imported crop that poses threats, government need to regulate their importation. And the last one I mentioned here is the need for government also to invest in organic crop production, because organic crop, for me, I would say is the best way, or the best nutrient source that we can always look into. But there's also a need for more investment in production of crops, like naturally, or production of organic crop. And I know and I believe that this will go in a long way to help us. I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope to bring to you more benefiting content. Thank you. Please drop your comments and